The distress beacon pierced through the cosmic void like a dying star's final scream. Commander Zara Chen stood motionless in the command center of the UES Shadowfall, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the signal's origin point. The beacon wasn't just any ordinary cry for help, it carried the encrypted signature of a diplomatic vessel from the Galactic Council. Distance to signal source? Chen's voice cut through the bridge's tension like a blade. 37 light hours, Commander, replied Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. The signal is coming from the Kepler 442 system, specifically from the third planet's orbit. Chen's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Kepler 442c was supposed to be uninhabited, a dead rock orbiting a dying star. No diplomatic mission had any business being there, yet here was proof that someone important enough to carry Council encryption codes was in mortal danger. Communications, can you decode the full message? Ensign Park's fingers danced across her console. Working on it now, Commander. The encryption is heavy. This isn't standard diplomatic coding. This is something much deeper. The bridge fell silent except for the subtle hum of the ship's systems. The Shadowfall wasn't like other vessels in the human fleet. Where others carried explorers, scientists, or standard military personnel, the Shadowfall carried something else entirely. Its crew roster was classified at levels that made even seasoned intelligence officers uncomfortable. The ship's very existence was known to fewer than a dozen people in the entire human government. Got it, Park announced, her voice suddenly strained. Commander, you need to hear this. The speakers crackled to life, and a panicked voice filled the bridge. The speaker was clearly alien, with the distinctive harmonic undertones of a seraphim diplomat. This is Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Council diplomatic vessel Harmony's voice. We are under attack by unknown forces. Our escort vessels have been destroyed. We carry information vital to galactic security intelligence regarding the return of the Devourers. Requesting immediate assistance from any nearby vessels. Our shields are failing. If anyone receives this message, know that the Devourers have found a way back into our galaxy. They're not extinct. They never were. We have proof, but we won't last much longer. Please, if there's anyone out there who can help. Static consumed the message as it cut to harsh silence. Chen felt the familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders like an old, comfortable coat. Around her, the bridge crew exchanged glances that spoke volumes. They all knew what this meant. The Devourers weren't just ancient history or scary stories told to young cadets. They were the reason ships like the Shadowfall existed in the first place. Helm, plot a course for Kepler 442c. Maximum burn. Commander, interrupted Dr. Sarah Martinez, the ship's intelligence specialist, stepping forward from her station. If the Devourers are truly back, this could be a trap. They're known for their psychological warfare tactics. Chen turned to face Martinez, her expression unreadable. Doctor, in your expert opinion, what are the odds that this is legitimate Council encryption? Martinez consulted her tablet, running rapid calculations. The encryption signature checks out. Voice print analysis confirms the speaker is indeed Ambassador Veltar. He's been the Seraphim representative to the Council for over 2 decades. But, Commander, if this is real, then we're about to walk into the kind of situation we've been training for our entire careers, Chen finished. The kind of situation that requires exactly the sort of people we have aboard this ship. She activated the ship-wide communications system. All hands, this is the Commander. We've received a distress call from a Council diplomatic vessel. Intelligence suggests this may be related to historical threats to galactic security. All departments are to begin immediate combat preparations. Department heads to the briefing room in 10 minutes. Chen moved toward the briefing room, her mind already racing through tactical possibilities. The Shadowfall's crew wasn't chosen randomly. Every person aboard had been handpicked not just for their skills, but for their ability to do what others couldn't or wouldn't. They were humanity's answer to threats that conventional forces couldn't handle. The briefing room filled quickly with the ship's senior staff. Besides Dr. Martinez, there was Chief Warrant Officer Marcus Reed, whose background in black operations was so classified that even Chen only knew fragments of his history. Next came Lieutenant Commander Ana Vasquez, whose expertise in xenobiology had made her invaluable in situations involving non-human entities. Chief Engineer Hassan al-Rashid possessed an almost supernatural understanding of both human and alien technology. Finally, Master Sergeant Lisa Thompson, whose psychological profile made most military psychiatrists deeply uncomfortable, but whose effectiveness in close quarters combat was unmatched. Status report, Chen began without preamble. Dr. Martinez activated the holographic display. The Devourers were supposedly eliminated approximately 800 years ago by a coalition of species led by the Ethereals. They were described as a hive-mind entity capable of consuming not just matter and energy, but consciousness itself. Entire species were reduced to empty husks alive, but with no memory, personality, or will. Reed leaned forward. What's our intelligence on their capabilities? Limited, Martinez admitted. Most records from that era were destroyed or corrupted. What we do know suggests they operate through some form of quantum manipulation. They can apparently phase in and out of normal spacetime. Conventional weapons were largely ineffective. Engineer Al-Rashid raised a hand. Commander, how did the ancient coalition defeat them if conventional weapons didn't work? That's classified at levels above even this cruise clearance, Chen replied. But, what I can tell you is that humanity wasn't part of the original coalition. We weren't spacefaring yet. However, our government has been preparing for their potential return for the past century. Thompson spoke for the first time, her voice carrying an edge that made everyone in the room slightly uncomfortable. What kind of timeline are we looking at for reaching the distress signal? At maximum burn, 18 hours, replied Vasquez. But, Commander, if they're already under attack. Chen stood, her decision made. Then, we do what humans do best. We improvise, adapt, and refuse to give up. The Shadowfall was built for this exact scenario, situations where conventional approaches fail. Each of you was chosen because you represent the absolute pinnacle of human capability in your respective fields. She paused, making eye contact with each of her officers. But, more than that, you were chosen because when faced with the impossible, humans don't just find a way, we find a better way. The galaxy is about to learn why Earth's government has been so secretive about our deep space capabilities. Reed smiled grimly. So we're not just responding to a distress call. We're announcing humanity's presence to whatever's out there. Exactly, Chen confirmed. And, if the Devourers have truly returned, they're about to discover why the universe's most dangerous problems require the universe's most dangerous solutions. The meeting broke up with each department head returning to their stations to begin preparations. Chen remained in the briefing room for a moment, staring at the tactical display showing their projected course. In 18 hours, they would either save the last survivors of a diplomatic mission, or they would become the first human casualties of humanity's introduction to galactic warfare. As the Shadowfall's engines roared to life, pushing the vessel toward maximum acceleration, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that this distress call was more than just a cry for help. It felt like destiny calling. In the depths of space, the ship cut through the darkness like a predator sensing wounded prey. But, unlike most predators, the Shadowfall was hunting something that had never encountered a human before. Something that had spent 8 centuries believing it was the apex threat in the galaxy. That was about to change. The crew of the Shadowfall settled into the familiar rhythm of high-speed transit, each department running continuous drills and equipment checks. In the weapons bay, Master Sergeant Thompson supervised the loading of ammunition that didn't appear in any standard military manual. In engineering, Chief Al-Rashid calibrated systems that most engineers would swear were impossible. In the medical bay, Dr. Vasquez prepared treatments for injuries that conventional medicine had never encountered. And, on the bridge, Commander Chen watched the stars streak past, knowing that in less than 18 hours, humanity would either prove itself worthy of its place among the galactic powers, or become another extinct species in the Devourer's wake. The distress beacon continued its lonely transmission into the void, unaware that the deadliest rescue mission in human history was already underway. 16 hours into their journey, the Shadowfall sensors began picking up the aftermath of destruction. Commander Chen stood before the main viewscreen, watching debris fields drift through space like metallic snow. The wreckage told a story of violence that made even her experienced crew exchange worried glances. Analysis, Dr. Martinez, Chen commanded, her voice steady despite the carnage displayed before them. Martinez's fingers flew across her console, processing the sensor data. 3 vessels, Commander. Council designs, definitely military escort ships. But, the damage patterns. She paused, her face pale. I've never seen anything like this. The hull breaches aren't from conventional weapons. It's like something reached inside the ships and turned their own structural integrity against them. Chief Reed stepped closer to the display, his experienced eye examining the wreckage. "Commander, look at the debris distribution. These ships weren't just destroyed, they were systematically dismantled. Whatever did this took its time." Engineer Al-Rashid's voice came through the calm system from his station in engineering. "Commander, I'm reading some very strange energy signatures from that wreckage. The metal itself seems to be singing? I know that sounds impossible, but the resonance patterns suggest the atomic structure has been fundamentally altered." Chen absorbed this information while calculating their remaining distance to the diplomatic vessel. 2 hours out, and they were already seeing evidence that the Devourers were unlike any enemy humanity had prepared to face. The ancient records hadn't been exaggerating. "Dr. Vasquez, what's your assessment of the biological implications?" Vasquez looked up from her xenobiology station, her expression troubled. "If the historical accounts are accurate, Commander, the Devourers don't just destroy ships. They consume the consciousness of the crew. The bodies might still be alive in those wrecks, but the minds." She shuddered involuntarily. "Understood," Chen replied. "Thompson, status on our tactical preparations?" Master Sergeant Thompson's voice carried its usual edge of controlled violence. "All weapons systems operational, Commander. But, if conventional weapons are ineffective against these entities, we might need to get creative." Chen nodded grimly. Creativity in Thompson's vocabulary usually involved approaches that made military tribunals very uncomfortable. But, against an enemy that could manipulate reality itself, conventional rules of engagement might prove suicidal. "Incoming transmission," announced Ensign Park. "It's weak, but it's definitely from the diplomatic vessel. Put it through." The speakers crackled with static, and Ambassador Veltar's voice emerged, noticeably weaker than before. This is the Harmony's voice. "If anyone is receiving this, please stay away. The Devourers they're not what we thought. They're not just consuming consciousness. They're learning from it. Each mind they take makes them smarter, more adaptable. They know about our weapons, our tactics, everything we know about warfare." The transmission cut to static, then resumed. "Wait, I'm detecting an approaching vessel. Unknown configuration. Whoever you are, you need to understand, these entities adapt to any threat. They've already consumed the minds of our entire escort. They know every tactic in Council military doctrine. Turn back before." The signal died completely. The bridge fell silent except for the subtle vibration of the ship's engines. Chen felt the weight of command pressing down on her like a physical force. They were approaching an enemy that learned from every encounter, grew stronger from every victory, and had just absorbed centuries of galactic military knowledge. "Commander," Dr. Martinez spoke quietly, "if the Devourers adapt to threats, and they've consumed Council military minds, they'll be expecting standard tactical approaches." "Then, it's fortunate," Chen replied with a slight smile, "that nothing about this ship or crew qualifies as standard." She activated the ship-wide communications again. "All hands, we're entering the combat zone in 90 minutes. What you're about to face is an enemy that learns from its victims, adapts to any threat, and has just consumed the tactical knowledge of an entire Council escort fleet. By all conventional measures, we're outgunned, outmaneuvered, and walking into certain death." She paused, letting that sink in. "However, the Devourers have never encountered humanity before. They don't know how we think, how we fight, or how we refuse to accept defeat even when logic says we should. Dr. Martinez, brief all departments on psychological warfare techniques." "Chief Reed, I want every unconventional weapon and tactic in our arsenal ready for deployment." "Thompson, prepare for close-quarters combat using protocols that aren't in any manual." The crew sprang into action with the smooth efficiency of a unit that had trained for scenarios most military minds couldn't conceive. In the weapons bay, Thompson supervised the loading of ammunition that incorporated human psychological warfare principles, rounds designed not just to destroy, but to confuse and disorient entities that relied on pattern recognition. In engineering, Al-Rashid began implementing modifications that would make the Shadowfall's energy signature fluctuate randomly, making it nearly impossible for an adaptive enemy to lock onto their systems. The ship's stealth capabilities were already beyond anything in the Council's arsenal, but now they were becoming something approaching incomprehensible. Dr. Vasquez worked with Martinez to develop countermeasures against consciousness-based attacks. Human psychology, it turned out, included several features that made it particularly resistant to hive mind intrusion. Humans' capacity for self-deception, paradoxical thinking, and holding contradictory beliefs simultaneously made them a nightmare for entities that relied on logical thought processes. "Commander," Park called out, "I'm detecting the diplomatic vessel. It's still intact, but..." Her voice trailed off as the main viewscreen shifted to show their target. The Harmony's voice hung in space like a wounded bird. Its elegant seraphim design was still recognizable, but something was fundamentally wrong with its appearance. The ship seemed to flicker between dimensions, as if reality itself couldn't decide whether it was really there. "Energy readings are off the charts," Al-Rashid reported. "Whatever's happening to that ship, it's operating on principles that shouldn't be possible." Reed studied the tactical display. "Commander, I'm reading multiple entities around the diplomatic vessel. They're not ships, they're something else entirely. And they're moving in patterns that suggest high intelligence." Chen watched the display, noting how the entities surrounding the diplomatic vessel moved with purpose and coordination. But there was something about their movement patterns that struck her as odd. "Dr. Martinez, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Martinez nodded slowly. "Their coordination is perfect. Too perfect. They're moving like a single organism, not individuals working together. Which means," Chen continued, "that they have a central coordination point. A weakness." Thompson's voice carried a note of anticipation. "Commander, if they're truly a hive mind, disrupting their coordination could level the playing field." "My thoughts exactly," Chen agreed. "But we need to get close enough to identify their coordination mechanism without alerting them to our presence." She turned to address the bridge crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to attempt something that no military in galactic history has ever tried. We're going to rescue hostages from entities that exist partially outside normal spacetime, using tactics they've never encountered, with weapons they can't adapt to because they operate on principles the Devourers have never seen." The Shadowfall continued its approach, its stealth systems engaged at maximum capacity. The ship had been designed to be invisible to conventional sensors, but, against entities that could manipulate quantum states, conventional stealth might not be enough. 30 minutes to contact," Park announced. Chen felt the familiar calm that always descended on her before combat. Around her, the bridge crew operated with the smooth precision of a unit that had trained together for years. Each person knew their role, understood the stakes, and trusted in humanity's ability to find a solution where none should exist. The entities surrounding the diplomatic vessel suddenly shifted their position, moving into what appeared to be a defensive formation. For a moment, Chen wondered if they had been detected despite their stealth systems. Then, she realized the truth was far more disturbing. The Devourers weren't responding to their approach. They were preparing for something else entirely. Something that suggested they had been expecting rescue attempts all along. "They're using the diplomatic vessel as bait," Reed said quietly, voicing what everyone on the bridge had just realized. Chen smiled grimly. "Then, they're about to learn the first rule of hunting humans. We're not prey. We're competition." The trap became visible as the Shadowfall drew closer to the diplomatic vessel. What had appeared to be 6 entities surrounding the Harmony's voice was actually a carefully orchestrated deception. Dr. Martinez's sensors revealed the truth: dozens of Devourers positioned throughout the system, using some form of quantum masking to hide their presence until potential rescuers committed to an approach vector. "Commander," Martinez reported, her voice tight with concern, "I'm reading Devourer entities positioned at every logical escape route. They've turned this entire system into a hunting ground. Any conventional rescue attempt would have walked straight into an ambush." Chen studied the tactical display, noting how the enemy positions formed an almost perfect sphere around the diplomatic vessel. It was textbook predator behavior: allow the prey to enter the killing zone before revealing the true scope of the threat. But there was something about the positioning that bothered her. "They're thinking like a council military unit," she observed. "Dr. Martinez, remind me, what did Ambassador Veltar say about the Devourers learning from their victims?" "That they absorb not just consciousness, but knowledge and tactical thinking," Martinez replied. "They know everything their victims knew. Which means they're fighting like seraphim tacticians," Chen continued. "Logical, methodical, predictable." She turned to her crew. "What they don't know is that humans don't fight like anyone else in the galaxy." Chief Reed stepped closer to the tactical display. Commander, if we're going to break their perimeter, we need to do something they won't expect. Something that goes against every military doctrine they've absorbed. Chen activated the communications system to engineering. Al-Rashid, status on the quantum displacement drive? Experimental systems are online, Commander, came the reply. But, you know the risks. We've only tested it in simulations. Understood. Prepare for activation on my command. She turned back to her bridge crew. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to demonstrate why human military doctrine includes provisions for tactics that most species consider insanity. The quantum displacement drive was humanity's newest and most classified technology. Instead of moving through space conventionally, it briefly shifted the ship into quantum superposition, existing in multiple locations simultaneously before collapsing back into normal space at the desired position. The technology was based on principles that most galactic civilizations considered theoretically impossible. Thompson, are your teams ready for immediate deployment? Standing by, Commander. Assault shuttles are loaded and teams are equipped with experimental ordnance. Dr. Vasquez, status on the consciousness shields? All crew members have been fitted with neural disruptors. If the historical accounts are accurate, the Devourers won't be able to penetrate human minds while the shields are active. Chen nodded. The consciousness shields were another piece of classified human technology, based on humanity's unique psychological makeup. Where other species had logical, ordered thought processes that could be easily infiltrated, human consciousness was chaotic, contradictory, and filled with mental static that made hive mind intrusion nearly impossible. Dr. Martinez, I need you to identify which of those entities is the command node. There has to be a central coordination point for their hive mind. Martinez's fingers flew across her console, analyzing the energy patterns of each devourer entity. After several minutes, she looked up with a grim expression. Commander, I don't think there is a single command node. The coordination appears to be distributed across multiple entities. But, there's something else. One of the entities near the diplomatic vessel is different. Its energy signature is much stronger, and it seems to be growing. Growing how? It's absorbing energy from the diplomatic vessel itself. If my readings are correct, it's not just consuming the consciousness of the crew, it's feeding on the ship's power systems, the structural materials, even the quantum fields generated by their drive systems. Reed leaned over the display. A learning entity that gets stronger with every resource it consumes. Commander, if we wait much longer, it might become powerful enough to threaten more than just this system. Chen felt the weight of decision settle on her shoulders. They could retreat, report the threat to Earth Command, and wait for a full fleet response. Or they could do what the crew of the Shadowfall did best, attempt the impossible using methods that shouldn't work. All stations, prepare for combat deployment. We're going in. She activated the ship-wide communications again. All hands, this is the commander. In approximately 10 minutes, we're going to attempt a rescue operation against entities that have spent the last 8 centuries perfecting the art of consuming civilizations. They've absorbed the tactical knowledge of every species they've encountered. They know every conventional military strategy in galactic history. She paused, feeling the ship's crew focus their attention on her words. What they don't know is that humans have never been conventional. We're about to demonstrate tactics they've never seen, using weapons that operate on principles they've never encountered, deployed by individuals who represent the absolute pinnacle of human capability. The quantum displacement drive began its activation sequence, causing a subtle vibration to run through the ship's hull. The Shadowfall stealth systems were already operating beyond galactic standards, but quantum displacement would make them temporarily undetectable even to entities that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Commander, Park announced, I'm receiving another transmission from the diplomatic vessel. Put it through. Ambassador Veltar's voice emerged from the speakers, but it was different now, strained, as if speaking was becoming difficult. Unknown vessel, I can sense your approach. The entity that's consuming our ship is growing stronger. It's learned everything we know about galactic defenses, about weapon systems, about... His voice faded for a moment, then returned. It's learned about the Council's defense networks. If it escapes this system, it could consume entire worlds before anyone realizes what's happening. The transmission continued, but Veltar's voice was becoming increasingly distorted. It's trying to access my memories of the Council chambers. If it learns the location of homeworlds, the coordinates of major installations, Please, if you're planning a rescue, you need to know, don't let it escape. Whatever you do, don't let it leave this system alive. Static consumed the signal as it cut to silence. Chen looked around the bridge at her crew. Each face reflected the same grim determination. They weren't just attempting a rescue anymore. They were potentially preventing the destruction of galactic civilization. Quantum displacement drive ready for activation, Al-Rashid reported. Thompson, assault team status? Ready for immediate deployment, Commander. We're prepared for close-quarters combat in potentially hostile dimensional space. Chen took a deep breath. All stations, execute. Displacement jump in 3, 2, 1. Execute. The Shadowfall vanished from normal space, existing for a brief moment in quantum superposition before reappearing directly between the diplomatic vessel and the largest devourer entity. The maneuver was so sudden and unexpected that for several seconds, the devourers seemed unable to respond. Launch assault shuttles, Chen commanded. All weapons, fire at will. The Shadowfall's weapons systems unleashed a barrage unlike anything the devourers had encountered. Instead of conventional energy weapons or kinetic projectiles, the ship fired rounds infused with quantum uncertainty ammunition that existed in multiple states simultaneously until impact, making them impossible to defend against using predictive algorithms. Thompson's assault shuttles launched from the ship's bays, their crews equipped with weapons designed specifically for close-quarters combat against entities that might not fully exist in normal space. Each shuttle carried a team of humans selected for their ability to function effectively in situations where conventional logic failed. Commander, Martinez reported, the devourers are adapting to our weapons faster than projected. They're already developing countermeasures. Chen watched the tactical display as the enemy entities began to coordinate their response. But there was something different about their movements now, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. They're confused, she realized. They're trying to apply Seraphim tactical doctrine to a situation that doesn't fit any pattern they've absorbed. Reed nodded grimly. Human unpredictability is working against entities that rely on learned behaviors. The assault shuttles reached the diplomatic vessel, and Thompson's teams began their boarding operation. But, as they cut through the ship's hull, they encountered something that stopped even Thompson's experienced warriors in their tracks. Commander, Thompson's voice came through the calm, tense with disbelief, you need to see this. The crew of the diplomatic vessel, they're still alive. But, they're not really here anymore. Thompson's assault team moved through the diplomatic vessel's corridors like phantoms, their consciousness shields creating a bubble of human thought in an environment that had been fundamentally altered by devourer presence. The ship's interior existed in a state of constant flux, with walls that shifted between solid matter and translucent energy fields. Commander, Thompson reported through the calm, her voice steady despite the impossibility of her surroundings, the crew is physically intact, but they're existing in some kind of suspended state. Their bodies are here, but their consciousness appears to have been extracted and stored elsewhere. Through Thompson's helmet camera, Chen watched as her team approached a group of Seraphim diplomats. The aliens stood motionless in what had once been the ship's conference room, their eyes open but vacant, their bodies breathing but empty of any spark of awareness. Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the calm from her position aboard the Shadowfall. Commander, if the consciousness has been extracted but not destroyed, there might be a way to restore it. But we'd need to locate where the devourers are storing the absorbed minds. On the bridge, Martinez suddenly straightened at her sensor station. Commander, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup in the largest devourer entity. It's not just growing anymore, it's preparing to reproduce. Chen felt ice form in her stomach. Explain. The entity has absorbed enough consciousness and energy to begin the reproduction process. If it succeeds, we won't be dealing with one enhanced devourer, we'll be facing dozens of them, each carrying the combined knowledge of everyone they've consumed. Reed stepped closer to the tactical display. How long do we have? Based on the energy accumulation rate, less than 20 minutes. Chen activated the communications to Thompson's team. Thompson, we need to locate the consciousness storage mechanism and neutralize it within 20 minutes, or this entire system becomes ground zero for a devourer outbreak that could consume the galaxy. Understood, Commander. My team is moving toward what appears to be the ship's central core. The energy readings here are unusual. Meanwhile, the Shadowfall continued its engagement with the devourer entities surrounding the diplomatic vessel. The human ship's quantum weapons were proving effective, but Martinez was right about the enemy's adaptation rate. What had been devastating attacks minutes ago were now being partially deflected or absorbed. "Commander," Al-Rashid's voice came from engineering, "our quantum displacement drive is recharged, but I'm reading massive dimensional distortions throughout the system. The Devourer's presence is destabilizing local spacetime." Chen processed this information while watching Thompson's team progress through the diplomatic vessel. The assault team had reached what appeared to be the ship's central core, but the chamber they found defied description. Floating in the center of the room was a sphere of pure energy, containing what looked like thousands of points of light. Those lights, Dr. Vasquez breathed over the calm, their individual consciousnesses. Every mind the Devourers have absorbed is stored in that sphere. Thompson approached the energy sphere cautiously. "Commander, I'm reading human life signs among the stored consciousnesses." "There are human minds in here." Chen's blood ran cold. Humans hadn't been spacefaring when the Devourers were supposedly eliminated 8 centuries ago. If there were human consciousnesses in the storage sphere, it meant the Devourers had been active much more recently than anyone had realized. "Thompson, can you disrupt the storage mechanism?" "Working on it, Commander." "But this technology is beyond anything in our databases. It's operating on principles that combine quantum mechanics with what appears to be pure thought manipulation." On the Shadowfalls bridge, Martinez suddenly gasped. "Commander, the largest Devourer entity just split. We now have 2 entities, and the new one is already beginning its own reproduction cycle." Chen realized they were running out of time. The Devourers were multiplying faster than the Shadowfall could destroy them, and each new entity carried the accumulated knowledge of all their predecessors. "All assault teams, fall back to the consciousness storage chamber. We're going to attempt something that's never been tried before." She activated the ship-wide communications. "All hands, prepare for emergency quantum displacement. We're going to attempt to transport the entire consciousness storage sphere aboard the Shadowfall." Al-Rashid's voice came back immediately. "Commander, that's impossible. The quantum displacement drive isn't designed to transport objects that exist partially outside normal spacetime." "Then, we'll modify it," Chen replied grimly. "Dr. Martinez, Dr. Vasquez, I need you to work with engineering to reconfigure our displacement systems. Thompson, your team needs to prepare the storage sphere for transport." Reed looked up from the tactical display. "Commander, even if we successfully transport the consciousness sphere, how do we restore the minds to their original bodies?" "One impossible task at a time, Chief." Over the next 15 minutes, the crew of the Shadowfall accomplished something that should have been physically impossible. Working with principles they barely understood, they modified their quantum displacement technology to interact with consciousness-based energy patterns. Thompson's team rigged the storage sphere with quantum anchors, creating a bridge between the sphere's exotic energy patterns and the Shadowfall's displacement field. Dr. Vasquez developed a restoration protocol based on human neurological patterns, while Martinez calculated the precise quantum frequencies needed to transport living consciousness. "Transport ready," Al-Rashid announced, his voice tight with stress. "But, Commander, we'll only get one shot at this. If the displacement fails, we could scatter those consciousnesses across multiple dimensions." Chen looked around the bridge at her crew. They were attempting something that violated every known law of physics, using technology they had modified on the fly, to save minds that existed in a state that science couldn't explain. "Execute transport." The Shadowfall's quantum displacement drive activated with a resonance that seemed to shake reality itself. For a moment that lasted an eternity, the ship existed in superposition between dimensions while pulling the consciousness storage sphere across the boundary between normal space and wherever the Devourers stored their victims' minds. When reality stabilized, the storage sphere materialized in the Shadowfall's cargo bay, surrounded by quantum containment fields that barely managed to keep its exotic energy from dissipating. "Transport successful," Dr. Vasquez reported. "Beginning consciousness restoration procedures." But their victory was short-lived. With the storage sphere removed, the Devourer entities began to act with desperate fury. The largest entity, now deprived of its accumulated consciousness reserves, turned its attention fully to the Shadowfall. "Commander," Martinez warned, "the primary Devourer is attempting to breach our consciousness shields. It's trying to absorb our crew directly." Chen felt a pressure against her mind unlike anything she had ever experienced. The Devourer was probing the edges of her consciousness, searching for a way past humanity's chaotic thought patterns. All hands, initiate psychological countermeasures, she commanded. The crew of the Shadowfall began employing the most human response to mental invasion imaginable. They started thinking about completely random, contradictory, and illogical things simultaneously. Reed contemplated mathematical paradoxes while remembering childhood songs. Martinez recited poetry while calculating quantum equations. Thompson composed haikus about violence while planning birthday parties. The effect on the Devourer was immediate and devastating. Its attempt to invade human consciousness was like trying to drink from a fire hose filled with static electricity. The entity recoiled, its form flickering as it struggled to process the chaotic flood of human thought. "It's working," Chen observed. "The entity can't adapt to human psychological patterns because they don't follow any logical structure." Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the calm. "Commander, I've successfully restored the first consciousness. Ambassador Veltar is awake and coherent." Within the next hour, the crew of the Shadowfall accomplished something that would be remembered throughout galactic history. They restored every consciousness that had been absorbed by the Devourers, including several human minds that had been captured during secret encounters spanning the previous century. The Devourer entities, deprived of their stored knowledge and unable to penetrate human consciousness, began to collapse back into their dormant state. Without the accumulated experience of their victims,